Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Patty, for welcoming me back.
Of course.
If I could, I'd like to indulge, and I'd like to ask the audience, please raise your hand if you have never seen one of my presentations. Okay, all right, okay. I'm always querying that because I have a standard intro, and I'll try to keep it short. So I grew up in the city of Cambridge, and my dad was a hunting and fishing advocate. And in fact, he owned a second-generation hunting, fishing, camping store a mile from Harvard. So he was an avid fly fisherman, and one year when I was 11 years old and the very shortest kid in my class, for some reason he decided to include me in a wonderful, epic wilderness trip in far northern New Hampshire to go fly fishing. Now, he knew I'm not a fly fisherman. I don't know what he thought I would do, but this was truly a seminal moment in my life, because we're 22 miles down a dirt road up at the Dartmouth land grant. It's wilderness. And the first thing I did was I found a ground nest accidentally, and I've got about 15 stings on my ankles. Fortunately, there's an ice cold brook, and I know enough to go stand in that. While it's cooling, all that pain, a light bulb goes off my head. I can follow this brook as far as I want and not get lost. So off I go. And in about a half an hour, I round a bend. And there, not 50 feet away, is the biggest animal this little city kid has ever seen, a bull moose. And I can tell you, I was mesmerized for hours. I studied it. I was just absolutely captivated. I went right home and I joined the Boy Scouts. I wanted to learn all things woodcraft. I got my first camera within a year. And I can remember the first book because I went right to the library. It was One Day at Teton Marsh. And it was written by an ecologist talking about the web of life on a marsh at the base of the Tetons. Never dreaming that I'm now 70, I've been there 40 times. So this was a moment in my life in which it crystallized, and I can look back, and I always want to be photographing wild animals of the Northwoods variety. I want to be studying them. I want to be at home learning about them. It's just been an absolute passion. So today we're going to look at one of the most iconic creatures in our Northwoods, the moose. Now, moose are the largest member of the deer family, and they are circumpolar. So they have them all over Eurasia, Russia, Northern Europe, and of course North America and Alaska. They are very unique in the deer family, though, because only they are designed for aquatic feeding. And you're going to see all sorts of behaviors that many other deer species simply do not engage in. Now, is there anyone here who's never seen a moose? Okay, good. This is good. I do this with other audiences, and half the room goes up, and they all crave seeing it. Because you really, unless you live where there's a good moose density, they're not easy to find. And I like the name of this program because has anyone ever heard a moose? Okay, show of hands if you have. Okay, so not so many. Moose have very different lives than we who haven't spent time studying them actually show us. So this is springtime, and you'll notice quite a few bites on the back legs. They suffer from a wide variety of biting insects. They don't always cause the problems, but it does cause unsightly sores on them. And this moose is reacting to a motorboat some mile away at a point. And I, in my kayak, can get ridiculously close. Now, always with my photos, it looks like the moose is right near the wall. That's the beauty of a 500 millimeter lens. I'm a very respectful distance away from the animals in all the photos. But the moose was very patiently feeding, paying no attention to me, and all of a sudden, I didn't hear the rowboat or the motorboat until the moose turned, and then a minute or two later it comes around a point. So that points how good those ears are. Really beautifully designed for their area and avoiding predators, because all deer, elk, moose, and all the other species around the world are prey species. Now, they don't know that we've extirpated the wolves. They still have to be on their toes. So this is a springtime shot. One of my favorite haunts used to be Baxter State Park up in Maine. Spectacular wilderness. I still consider it the Yellowstone of the East. It's hard to get up to, it's hard to get in there, but it's well worth the effort. You get animal activity because it's been that way since, I don't know, mid-1900s. The animals act as though they never saw humans. It's wondrous. Now, typically when a moose calf has her first litter of young, it's typically one. And somehow scientists have realized that moose don't immediately bond with the youngsters. And many times the moose calf is actually abandoned. What makes it even more challenging is moose calves have a habit of following. If a big deer comes through or even a human, the moose calf follows it away as though that's who I'm supposed to learn and feed from. So what a moose mom does is she finds a very secluded area, and she will typically go back to that in subsequent years. Very secluded, that has some feed for her for about a month, and as soon as she gives birth, again, that first year it's usually one, the first struggle for that little calf is to learn to stand because it's been all folded up. It's about 25 pounds. The next thing she does, she licks off all the afterbirth to get rid of the scent because she doesn't want predators smelling their way in to eat her little one. And then there's a big challenge for that youngster to find its way to her teats. Now she's laying down, and the minute the youngster's muzzle goes anywhere near those teats underneath her hind leg, she raises it, giving it an option. But sometimes it takes an hour. But once it learns, now it knows where sustenance it is. And within an hour, it's learned to stand. Now, for about 2 to 3 weeks, mom will not leave that area. And what she's focusing on is she needs to build a real bond. She has these beautiful, subtle vocalizations, and the calf gets used to hearing those. And after the course of a month, she has very rich milk, so it is growing very rapidly. It's gaining strength every day. It now can travel with her, but it knows she's my food source and she's my protector. Now, a lot of people may not know it, but more people are injured in North America every year by moose than bears, and specifically cow moose. They are very, very defensive in protection of their young. People tend to think of the bulls as being very aggressive. Typically, my experience and a lot of the books, the researchers, when they're busy mating and they're attracting or fighting or sparring, they're so focused on that that if you're respectful of your distance, you don't even get paid more attention to than a squirrel. So that's kind of fascinating behavior. So in this particular scene, mom is very comfortable feeding in the middle of the pond, and the calves are on the shoreline, and she keeps an eye on them, and she will respond to any threats, but it shows a level of trust that she's built up that bond, and they're not going to wander away, and they're going to stay where she wants them to. Now this is a different scene in a different year. I discovered another great place for moose activity is up in Umbagog, and this is a much earlier calf. This might only be 4 weeks old. How do I know this? Look at the bright reddish color. So this is the color of a much younger moose calf, and within about 2 weeks it will go to a darker brown. You also notice that she isn't looking her prettiest. Moose have one coat of hair. It has a dense guard hair and then an underneath warmer, woollier hair. But they don't grow a summer coat. They have one molt a year. It's around June, which is when this photo is being taken, and they will regrow a new winter coat. So there's an indicator. Moose are not adapted for heat or warm weather at all. In fact, they're adapted to a mean temperature of about -10. What that means is they're more comfortable in a Yellowstone setting of -50 than they are at 80 degrees. So there's your first indicator why we have a struggle here to maintain large moose herds in New Hampshire. We're on the low edge of where they can do. The other thing they really need, other than cold temperatures, is lots of snow. So here the mother moose is going to lead it away, and the calf is going to dutifully follow. And it takes it right into the woods. Of course, the calf, being very curious, comes right back out to investigate this strange shape in this 14-foot-long kayak. Now, moose are, by most researchers' accounts, very curious, very smart, very good explorers, and they will frequently travel when they're dispersing as youngsters to whole new areas, which is how years ago, when I was still living in Massachusetts, a moose showed up in Brookline, Massachusetts. Brookline. But they're able to utilize sections even in Massachusetts, which is densely packed and fragmented, little teeny quarters where people don't go. Probably nobody saw that moose until it showed up in downtown Brookline. Amazing. Now, a moose's diet is some 200 to 250 different plant species. And moose do best when there are openings, mature forest, immature forest, waterways that have shrubby plants, a whole variety. If it's a monotonous diet, moose simply don't do well. So what they rely on is logging, which unfortunately they were sort of curtailing a lot of that around here, worrying about our carbon footprint. Forest fires, which we also try to suppress. Things like avalanches, wind blowdowns, ice storms. Whenever there's an ecological catastrophe, moose are going to move in and take advantage of all that young growth. And it's taken us a while to learn that's just how moose thrive. Now, everybody looks at the moose's nose and thinks it's homely. My grandmother says that, I'm sorry, my mother-in-law says that God made a mistake when he created the moose. Well, it's kind of, I just see this spectacular animal with a muzzle that is perfectly designed for feeding under the water. Now that's where it really differentiates from all the other species of deer. They can munch on things that are under the surface. Only the moose has nostril nares that close when its head goes under. Only it can actually dive deeper, sometimes up to 18 feet, to get at choice items that are on the bottom. And in fact, a moose's muzzle is prehensile. We all know what that means, right? It can actually grab items like our fingers can and choose not just the growing green, pull it out by the roots, and then it is so dexterous, this muzzle, turn it around and eat the most growing, tender, nutritive part, spit out the rest. So they are known as concentrate feeders. Unlike your average deer, which is a grazer, as we all know in our gardens, they'll go through and they'll take a bite of everything. A moose is going to actively select with this amazing muzzle, which is loaded with nerve endings, for the highest nutritional value. Because what happens is there's really 3 seasons in a moose's life. There's winter, which is about survival. There's summer, which is about feeding. And the bulk of this program is really going to be about fall, which is about mating. And that's when what I call the big dance takes place. And moose transform themselves from quiet, solitary creatures to very social animals with unbelievable activities and behaviors. And until you see them and hear about them, you will not believe what you're going to see. So here you see a little bit of that prehensile. It's actually chewing and moving things around. Now, like all the deer members, they have incisors in their front bottom, no upper incisors. They have a bony plate up above, which they're going to snip things off with. Now, they have molars behind. Now, they are a ruminant, like a cow. So a moose spends its day with these periods, starting very early in the morning, right at sunrise. And they go through these 8 to 9 periods in a typical day if it's not winter now. And that is feed, rest a bit while you chew your cud, and actually nap. Sometimes that takes up a whole hour. Then get up and it repeats. So this repeats itself all the way through the day until we get to winter when everything changes. And a lot of the plants that they eat have, the woody plants have high toxins as they really don't want to be eaten, so that's their defense. The moose has a very specific liver profile that actually can detoxify all these things. In the summer, they rely on a great deal of aquatic plants, especially the bulls, because they need sodium for that growth. They need all the minerals, and it's highly concentrated in aquatic plants. Now, the cows will do this too, but the most amazing thing is a moose antlers rack is grown in 150 days from start to finish. And in our area, this can be 40 pounds of antler growth. If you go up to Alaska, the record is 80 pounds of antlers. It's some of the fastest growing animal material in the world. And yet, it's a luxury organ. What its purpose is to attract females with this fantastic spread of antlers multiple times, great big huge palms, and to show off to the other males, you want to mess with me? Let's give it a go. Come on, bring it on. So it really is a luxury organ. Now, here's a moose sitting down, resting. Again, it's eat, sit down and chew your cud, and then have a nap. And it's astounding to see these. And the more I studied moose and found them in nature, the more I realized they do a lot of nothing. There's a whole lot of nothing going on. They have no timeline. There's no, come on. It really is therapeutic to spend some time with them. Now, antlers are a spectacular feature. And what happens is from about April, there's this little pedicel nub, and it starts to push out like a bulbous thing. And you can watch this day by day in which it gets longer and longer, almost 4 inches a day in really good moose habitat. And it grows in a specific way. It grows out and it begins to palm, and then it flares, and then the palmation flares again. And this is the same in our moose all the way up to Alaskan moose. And what's feeding it is a network of blood vessels with nerves and a very fine skin with brown hairs, hence the name velvet. And you can see it does look very soft and velvety. Now, while all this is taking place, the antler is very, very delicate and subject to being broken. And the moose have some sort of a semblance of where that width ends. It's like me and that new pickup truck I got, which has the great big mirrors, and I thought, this is going to knock off. I'm going to hit cars. But they get a semblance of where it is, and they're very cautious when they move through the woods. You see that great big shoulder hump? That is a very large shoulder bone, which gives leverage to tendons and muscles, because the head has a tremendous amount of weight, not so much with a cow, the female, but with the bull. Because in the rut, when we get to the big dance sequence, not only is he going to have this massive amount of antler growth, his neck over the course of about the 8 to 10 weeks of rut is going to double in size. Massive musculature. Why? Because he may have to do battle, pulverizing straight into another 1,000-pound, or in Alaska, 1,600-pound bull. Crash! So they need these tremendous strength of muscles and sinew. And that's what that shoulder hump anchors all of it. And there's that beautiful muzzle. Now, the Native Americans used to take full advantage of moose for a food source. And one of the big delicacies right away is that muzzle. Very delicious. The first thing I heard that they would take. Moose are very, very strong swimmers. Some of the researchers are kind of split. In our area, we don't have wolves. I've read various accounts that where they do have wolves, the wolves won't hesitate to attack while the moose is swimming because it's now defenseless. The wolf will climb up on the back and literally begin to dismember the animal while it's swimming. Now, in the east, where we don't have the wolves, they don't have to worry about that. Another worry, actually, in the Pacific, because they have wolves all the way across to Washington and Oregon, they are so confident swimming, they will decide they're going to go off to another island. Orcas have been seen consuming wolves. So what it points to, though, is they are explorers, much like mice. They are very confident in their abilities. And what the key to their swimming is, you think with all that weight, all of their coat of hair is hollow. So it aids a great deal in buoyancy. And the ability to dive up to 18 feet that's been measured, that's quite a feat now. They must be using those powerful strokes to actually plunge themselves down into the water for feeding. They really are quite amazing animals. All right, this is now about a 2-month-old calf and sticking right next to mom. Now, that calf will nurse for about 5 months. And unbelievably, within 2 weeks of being born, it will already start to sample the vegetation, which will be the mainstay of its life. So it adapts very quickly to what it's going to eat for most of its life. But that 5 months of milk, mother will produce somewhere near 440 pounds of milk for that calf in one season, that 5 months, which is astounding. Very high in milk fat, super high in nutrition. It really is what lets them grow very quickly. And the sooner they grow, the quicker they can escape predators. Because what they need isn't so much bulk or strength, it's the size, the distance up to those legs. An average adult moose has about 4.5 feet of legs. And the big advantage there is when they're out in the west where you have the sagebrush, I once actually got to watch in Yellowstone 19 wolves chasing a bull moose in the ruts. And the only thing that saved that bull was he could run straight through that sagebrush, which typically is about this tall, in a straight line, because moose have a method of running in which their body isn't going up and down. The legs are. The body seems to float. The wolves, being about that tall, had to start doing this. So slowly it was 19 wolves chasing, then 12, then 6, then 3. And when it was 3, they knew this moose is in prime. We're not taking him for dinner today, so they gave up. It was an amazing electric thing to see. But that's the design feature, that when a moose is growing strongly and comfortably and confident, it can't avoid predators. Now, even though by fall this calf will have put on some 300 to 400 pounds, mom will keep it over winter because she knows it still doesn't have enough experience how to confront a threat. And the way they confront a threat, they need good solid ground. All 4 of those legs with real power can kick in any direction. Any direction is the key. So a wolf can't come in from the back of the side because it could get its rib cage opened up. And one of the first few books I did take home from the library when I was way back at 12 or 13 was an explorer photographer who'd gone all across the Yukon. And there were page after page, and you would see wolf carcasses in which they were trying to take down a full-grown moose. One kick opened that whole wolf's rib cage. He's dead. That's the power that moose have. And they will kill grizzly bears, they will kill black bears, they will kill wolves, they will kill coyotes. That's in defense of their young. And again, it's generally the female. It's not a rutting bull moose. Rutting bull moose are upset about the mating process, and they might be upset with another bull. Now, you do hear these rare stories about one who's gone crazy and is going to go out of train, but those are much more rare. It is generally the female, the cow moose, who's the most dangerous and most aggressive. Here she is nursing. It only takes, I don't know, minutes or so. They get a tremendous amount of milk flow out of there. And again, it's more a supplement than anything, especially by this age. But I was astounded one day. I discovered a beautiful little beaver pond up in Jackson, New Hampshire. And I had about 2 hours, and there was a moose out there with a calf. And at the end of it, I watched the calf. Now, this is September. Go up and try to nurse. And mom wouldn't have any of it. So it was right on the edge. And the calf is now getting told, no, no more milk for you. But it was amazing to see that late in the year. They do have a vestigial tail. It's only about 2 or 3 inches long. You can see a real bond with the cow and the calf. So for the most part, they stay in the forest. Her job is to keep that youngster secure, so she can't afford to go where there might be better nutrition. The bulls, on the other hand, will be out in the open ponds, out in the open meadows, because they need as much nutrition as they can absorb. It turns out that moose can live to 20 years, although a 21-year-old moose is like having someone that's over 100 years of age. It's a real challenge. There's been a lot of experience, luck, maybe decisions that were made. Most moose, though, it's closer to 10 to 12 years. Now, for bulls, a 15-year-old bull is a really old bull. We're going to see in this program that while cows have to put up with a lot of energy to rear and raise and take care of the young, it's bulls who put it all on the line to make the moose population go. And they just take too much stress. So 15 years is about it. I call this mini-me. They have spectacular hearing, as do all the deer, and they are probably hearing something I could only guess, but this is how they stay so aware of predators. Excellent hearing, excellent scent as well. Eyes, not so good. They're a little nearsighted. I've taken advantage of that on occasion. Now, you see these little pedestals here? So this is a moose that was born in April, and this is September. So what's that, 5 or 6 months old? And yet we see those tiny little bulbous things. Now, that tells us this is a bull. Now, by next fall, this bull will already be sexually mature. It will not be able to mate for easily 5 or 6 more years because there's a lot of experience to get to the big dance. And then there's even more to have that lucky lady decide she wants to be with you. So here's a great shot showing the real velvety texture. Now, many of the moose are drawn, especially in the spring, this is right off the road, to the salt that we clean our roads with, and it pools up, and they crave salt. Nice, deep, dark, rich coat. It's in great shape.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, this was an interesting shot. I was in Yellowstone, and one of the things I love about Yellowstone is people are so willing to share what they've seen and where they've seen it. And 20 minutes earlier, a man gave me explicit directions where he just left this moose. So here I am, courtesy of him. And this is a great photo shot because when that antler is in velvet, this moose had an accident and damaged just this side. Now next year, the moose antler will grow normal, barring another accident. But for this year, this guy's not even going to get into the dance. They're going to turn him away at the door because he's got a deformed, he wouldn't stand a chance. But that's a great story. There's a different shot of him out in the meadow. Of course, the highlights. It really was unusual to see the antler somehow had get bent down, continued to grow normally, but it blocked his vision to the side. So that alone means he's not going to see what's coming at him. Now, as the growth of the antler is nearing its end, which is usually around the end of August, what happens is the nerve endings begin to dry up, the blood vessels all begin to dry up, and so the moose have a habit of thrashing to rub it all off, and that stains with the red blood all of the antler. Now, fortunately, thrashing is a lot more a part of the big dance for the bulls. It's how they show dominance, it's how they get rid of their aggression. So they do it with plants and trees and bushes, and that tannin that's in those stains it a much nicer brown and tan. So this reddish color is just temporary, but it shows that we're right at the point of the big dance is just about to begin. So I've never been a gambler, but this was one day that I did gamble. There's a spot up at Umbagog that takes a 10-mile paddle, and it's a long day to get out there. But I decided, since I knew at this point in my life when the peak of the rut was, that I was going to make that gamble. So I had a motel room. I was out an hour or two before sunrise. I had my kayak loaded. The first thing I did was, once I got out to the opening of the lake, oh my gosh, the temperature was such that the entire lake was soaked in fog. So the bad news is, even though I took a dead reckoning, there's no way I was going to get where I was going, because when you get lost, research proves you go right and right and right, and 1 hour later, I'm right back where I started. The only thing is I discovered this. Now this is an eagle on a dead moose carcass. 3 times up here, over 20 years, I have come across bull moose who've put everything on the line to mate and come up with the wrong end of the stick. They've been gored and they're dead and they're in the water. But this is a bounty for all kinds of other creatures. Remember, in nature, all of life serves the future of other life in their death. Nothing ever goes to waste. So it was a remarkable story. And of course, in about an hour, all the fog cleared away. Now I know exactly where I'm going. I got down there just in time. I was actually about to photograph an immature bald eagle taking a bird bath, which would have been a great set of photos, except from some 400 yards away, I heard this unmistakable sound of a bull moose surging through about 2 feet of water. So I turned to my right, and I know the topography here. I've paddled it dozens of times. I don't want this moose to go that way. I want him either to come towards me or go the other way. So I have nothing to lose. The sound you're about to hear should be in the dictionary under vulgar. It is a cow moose in heat. I've heard it many, many times. The minute I echoed that, this moose turned and looked straight at me. And now, of course, this is way, way back now. I had about 15 minutes between the first shot and this one. And I've got to paddle furiously because there's about 250 yards of water before that shelf of land he's now at. Now, I know he has horrible eyesight. I don't need to call him anymore. Once I see him moving towards me, he thinks I'm the cow of his dreams. But now I get here, and now the gig is up. There's nothing I can do. I'm this weird shape in this 14-foot boat. I don't look anything like a cow moose. I don't smell like a cow moose. So at this point, I'm just hoping and praying he's not going to go to the right, because if he does, that's where the sun is. I'm not going to have a single photo. Instead, he turns to my left. Now you see why I say surging through the rut. So this gives you the kind of power that a bull moose has with all its strength and all its might. And it is literally, you hear that water as it gushes around. You see it spraying up. That is a mission that he's on. Now, moose, for the most part, live solitary lives. But what happens is with the change of daylight right around August, it stops their growth of antlers. They then get a complete physiological change. They're prompted to stop eating. The minute they stop eating, this lasts for 2 to 3 weeks, their whole physiology changes. Their urine has a very, very musky odor to it, and they want to find love. If they don't want to find love, they want to fight somebody to find love. There's only 2 things on their mind. That's why they call it the rut. They're deeply in a rut. This is mid-September to mid-October. It's the same all over the world, by the way. Up in Alaska, over in Sweden, it's the same time frame. Amazing. So this is like I had a director. I've always wanted a swimming bull moose shot. He's right there. Notice the little wound here. He's already had one dance, one fight with at least one other bull. Typically, they can get 10, 12, 20 injuries during the rut because depends how many times they're going to fight with another bull and how good that bull is. When you go up to Alaska, they can have 125 injuries all over themselves. So now you're starting to see how stressful it is if you're going to be a bull. And the joke is that we guys lose our minds in that pursuit of sex. These things are really off the charts. He pauses because I'm pursuing a little bit. And now you notice the very long bell or dewlap with a bag and a rope. Now, cow moose will have a little rope. They will never have the bell. It's a sex organ, as we're going to learn, that they take full advantage of for enticing females. Now he looks at me, says, "You want some of this?" No, I'm just an innocent follower. And this is my favorite shot. I love the water still spraying up. He's in prime condition. Now, a bull moose from about 6 to 12 is peak, prime, fabulous condition. Now, this is always subject to what kind of habitat they have. If there's good nutrition in the habitat, good minerals, a wide variety of young growth, you can produce tremendous moose. That means great bulk, great antlers. By the time they get to 12 and 13, even though they might live longer, their antler is going to begin to grow down, their bulk is going to begin, because it's like me at 70. I just can't do what I could at 40. It's just not designed that way. So they will spend a great deal of time wandering around. And what we're learning is they like lake shores, probably because the sounds you're going to hear more of will carry across the water. In the west, where they don't have as much water, they will go up to the tree line, where you get a tremendous amount of that same effect of the water echoing your sound, does the same in the tree line. It keeps the sound above the trees. So they become much more vocal come the fall. And in the water, there is no threat from a moose. On the land, again, it's that kicking. Now, keep in mind, I'm nowhere near as close to this bull still. But they are very, very confident. And generally, when you're near moose, they will give you a look that'll say all you need to. Don't get any closer. They are very powerful animals.
Their eyes look very small.
They are for the size of their head. And generally, with all the wild animals that I study, the larger the feature is, the more important it is. So it gives you, it's nowhere near as important as their sense of smell with that huge nose or their hearing. Their sight just isn't what it needs to be. Okay, now we're going to switch gears. Now we're in Grand Teton National Park, which is just spectacular moose habitat. This is at Moose Pond, aptly named. I've been there 7 times. I have yet to go there without there being at least one moose there. So it's a very aptly named pond. And you have to keep focused because it's so easy to get distracted by the Tetons right there, right above you. So here's a bull moose, and I'm thinking, boy, it doesn't get much better than this. I've got a bull to photograph. He's got a nice size rack. He's drinking. He's not feeding, so I'm sure he's in the rut. And he's wandering around looking because He's got a gal. He's got a gal. All right, this is good. Well, after about an hour, all of a sudden he leaves the shoreline. And he goes right to the edge. And he's in good shape. He's a nice, bulky-bodied bull moose with a nice set of antlers. But look, what's he looking at? Now, I don't hear anything. Of course, I don't have great big ears. I don't see anything. Now, on the other side of the pond, it's all brush, and there is a certain amount of hidden area behind the trees I can't see, and that's where he's paying attention. And out comes Big Boy. Now, Big Boy's antlers, look at the length of those brow tines, 9, 10 inches long. Notice the dried blood, so he's still thrashing. He's still trying to get rid of all that skin covering that helped grow his antlers, and he is serious. Now, when they're fully in the rut, you start to notice different behaviors. See the tongue coming out? And this is what I heard once he came out into the opening. It's a deep, deep grunt, and it's timed to 1 forefoot. And all of this is drama. It's him calmly, methodically, nobly showing anyone that wants to notice, I'm here, and I'm massive, and I'm powerful. And that grunt is deep, and the fact that it's all so slow. I have been in the Maine woods, and I have heard these bull sounds before I've seen them. That gets the hair in the back of your neck up. But once they come out in the open, okay, you know what he's looking for, and just stay out of his way. So he's going to come right towards our earlier bull. He's going to do a little thrashing. So again, this is a demonstration. This is him saying, yeah, I'm in training. I'm in shape. Now, part of this is to get rid of those remnants of the dried blood. But part of it is aggression and dominance display. And it's loud. You can actually hear this. He wants that bull to notice him. And so this is what I mean about this is all slow and deliberative. He wants the bull that's on the shore to notice everything about him. His bulk, the size of his antlers, the length of his tines, how aggressive he is. This is all a show. He goes right in front of her, and she's looking at him saying, hey, wait a second, I like you. I don't even think I want this guy's number anymore. You and me, we could make beautiful music. He comes right up on the bank. Look at the length of those tines. Oh my gosh, this is like an Alaskan moose. Now, by the way, the researchers used to believe that there were 4 subspecies of moose in North America. Well, with the ability now to decode the DNA genome, a moose is a moose is a moose. The same moose in Sweden, Siberia, here, Canada, Alaska, it's all the same. What they're seeing is ecotypes, different ecological habitats with prevailing sunshine differing than the darkness, different feeding conditions, producing subtle differences in shape and size. They all have the exact same DNA. And he parades right in front of me, and he goes right up to our other bull. And the other bull is doing his best to ignore him. You can see him. If I don't look at you, maybe you're not really here. And he's very persuasive. So eventually our bull looks right up and says, you know what? I don't like her. You can have her. I really never did like her. If I didn't see this, I would not have believed it. Now, of course, what I would love to see and photograph is one day bulls fighting. And I have 7 or 8 different books, all by moose researchers who've spent their lives, really. You're not going to see a bull with a spectacular rack like this one fighting with this one. He's not in the same weight range, or he's just not on the same level. And in fact, what they've learned is bulls will do what's called sparring. Now imagine if you're a 4-year-old bull and you've got some palmation, you've got some tines, you bump into this guy a month earlier before the rut is actually in full swing. Those two may get together. They will slowly touch each other's heads, rack to rack, and then they'll do a little twisting. There's no violent thrusting. There's no trying and knock him back. It's sort of a Marquis de Queensberry rules. where the little guy's not going to have his feelings hurt even. The big guy's not going to push more than his weight because he knows this is sort of like training and getting ready. And it's training for the younger bull to gather some experience. And by the way, there will be places when younger bulls will witness bigger bulls actually have a fight. And they'll know what's involved. So this is not mysterious to them. Experience really helps them guide how their behavior is going to move forward. It is amazing. When there is actual sparring, nobody ever gets hurt. Now that doesn't mean on occasion that bulls don't interlock their antlers. There is in the Harvard Museum, up above one of the doorways, a spectacular set of antlers. And I was reading one of my books just last night. One of the premier moose researchers said when he took a tour there, the guide pointed out, yeah, these guys died fighting. And in his book, he explained they absolutely did not, because one rack was over 6 feet wide with spectacular long tines. The other was about 3.5 feet with barely 3.5 or 4-year-old. And they were sparring, and accidentally they got locked together. Now, as these things dry out, they go through a stage where they actually become just bone, really hard bone. And that's so they can absorb the impact. And when they, in a violent fight, thrust together, they can bend. Now, even in sparring, this can happen. It was an accident. So the youngsters at rack got intertwined. Neither one can extricate it. So they're both going to starve to death. Or worse, a wolf or a coyote is going to come in and eat them alive. But that's nature. But that does not happen with any kinds of frequency. But sparring is very different than fighting. Fighting is absolutely violent, and one of the goals is to kill, if you can, kill the opponents. So that's why these bulls do not make it to the 20 years or maybe 21 that a cow will. They don't run those kinds of risks. So many times when a cow has found a bull, they will have a calf with them, and they will continue for about 10 days. The bull pays no attention to the calf. He's interested in only one thing, mating with her. And the calf is always curious. So here's a waiting portion where the cow has found a bull. Now we're deeply into the middle of the rut. And what's happening, again, that physiologically, the complete change, the pheromones that are in its urine. So 5 or 6 times a day, a bull will seek out an area of soft earth. He will scrape out a basin. And I've seen this 5 or 6 times, watched it happen in front of me in the woods. They scrape out this basin, and then they step forward and they urinate into it. And then they back up so that dewlap is right over it. And they bend way down, and they splay with their hooves. They want to splash that all up over their bell and their antlers. And it's like me putting Aqua Velva on for a hot date. And I wish Aqua Velva worked so good, because I have seen cow moose come running over to either get in that pit or rub all over that bull. And I have seen cow moose fight with each other to compete to get with that bull. And I have seen calves who don't even know what's going on, they're this year's calves, get in that pit. So this is a mechanism where if enough of that gets on her, 24, 48, 72 hours, she's going to come into heat. So now what he does, he waits with her. Now, this whole time she's been feeding because she needs to keep putting on weight. He is interested only in fighting or mating, so he just has to wait. So it really is a waiting game, and she is in charge. And there's a calf expressing interest, and the cow's sort of confused, but it has no interest in the calf whatsoever. And we know that's a female because there's no pedestal on the head. And I found this interesting. Now, because they go through much stress and they're not eating, when they can, they will sit down and rest. And it's always fascinating to see how a 6 or 7 foot shoulder moose gets down on the ground. They lower their knees first, and then they're able to put their rump down. And they get up in the inverse. And you wouldn't think they could do that, but they do it very seamlessly. And this calf decided, you know, I got an itch on my head. You mind if I borrow your antlers? And the bull, the bull could care less, just not reacting to it at all. So you see the multiple pits happening. It continues to do it. And I was actually at Baxter State Park one day on a small mountain peak, a little knoll, and there's another mountain peak. and to my surprise, a cow came out on that peak while I'm watching the binoculars. A bull stepped out and rose up. She stepped away and said, "Not yet, buddy." She is in charge. So this is called waiting on the female. Now, unbeknownst to you, 3 feet in front of his nose is the cow. He's been with her. I've been in this spot for 3 days. He's been with her all that time. There's a calf around still. And this is called the Flehmen posture, or the lip curl. So you see his lower teeth exposed. Now there's an organ called the Jacobson's in his upper palate. And he is literally tasting and scenting her urine. And now he's going to know, because he's going to continually do this, he's going to know exactly when he can mount her and she will be receptive. So this is called waiting on the female. And they may do this 5 or 6 times over the next 2 days. Once she is impregnated, she's out of the dance. She goes home, she goes off into the woods. He goes off to look for another female. It's just the way they are. In Alaska, they will have groups like harems, like the elk do. 5, 10, 15 cows. And now the bulls try to service them all. But there's other bulls, and they may not rank like the lead bull does, but he can't get to all the cows. So if they stick on the outside, they might get to mate with somebody. So that's how it works in Alaska. But you have these massive bulls and incredible fights where the ground gets all torn up. That's amazing to see. Now, after the end of the rut is the most challenging time for all our moose. Because by the end of the rut, generally, most bulls have lost 20 to 25% of their weights. They've just put out too much effort. They will begin to feed in the latter stages, but they are way behind the curve now. If they've had any injuries, they might be still pus, they might get infected. So it's a very daunting time. And winter is the most challenging because their whole diet is going to change. They've had the luxury in the summer to eat 30, 40, even 50 pounds of vegetation, which is how they put on all this bulk. But that stops with the big dance, and then in winter, everything is gone. Moose is an Algonquin translation of he who strips bark and eats twigs. So that's what their diet switches to. They try to find the youngest of the tips up on the high in the aspens. They try to find bark of smaller trees and they'll strip it off with their teeth. But they cut down on their energy by pretty much not moving around. They stay in large areas almost all day. Instead of having 5 to 9 feeding periods, they'll have 2. Because they know it's like you or me trying to get through about 5 months of just eating cabbage. I mean just cabbage. So there's nothing that sounds good to eat, and there's no nutrition. You're just filling your belly. So instead of the moose pie in the summer, which is like a cow pie, it's got all that partially digested from their ruminants, yucky, it's little pellets that if you crush it, it looks like sawdust because that's what they're eating. It's pretty much woody fibers. But if the luck is with them, they get through the winter. That's a time, though, when many moose, especially the bulls, don't make it through the winter. It's very, very challenging at that point in time. What happens is the older bulls will now, it's like there's a truce. They'll hang out with all the older bulls. The cows and the calves will stay off by themselves. The younger bulls will aggregate in a different area. So this is a shot in Grand Teton, and one day we went out, we had 19 bull moose all together. Now you see the pedestal where the antler was. They will drop these in the winter, sometimes as soon as December. They don't need that 11 pounds each or 25 pounds total weight carried around. It's of no value. It grows over very quickly and heals, and along about April, it instantly starts to come out all over again. Absolute magic. They can reach up sometimes as high as 10 feet. They will use their body on a smaller sapling to either walk up the tree, forcing it over, because what they want is the higher, more tender shoots that are at the end. The most delicate twigs, they have less woodiness, a little bit of flavor, a little bit more nutrition. And willows are the biggest fare for moose worldwide. And that was what was so interesting about Yellowstone National Park. When we put the wolves back in, we had no idea what it was going to do to the whole environment. It turns out that elk were so over browsing the willows that the moose habitat was getting damaged to the point where moose numbers were literally disappearing. Now the moose are way back up, the elk are back up in the high country, not hanging around like they used to, and the whole ecosystem is now flourishing. Willows are the key for moose. So you can always tell the sex of a moose even without looking for the pedestal. The females have this beautiful reddish brown nose, and the males it's very dark, if not jet black. So horns or no horns, look to the nose. And here's a calf still with it over winter. Now interestingly, calves may stay with the female right through breeding season, and about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks before she's actually going to give birth, now she's going to get very aggressive with that calf. She's going to say, okay, you're done. And I have watched in Baxter State Park calves get charged at by their own mothers. Now they've built this wonderful bond, but she's got to send a message because she wants to be alone. She can't afford to have that calf draw in a coyote or a wolf to her newborn. So I've watched them charge at it and actually kick. Now they won't make contact. It's not that far of an aggression. But it takes the calf a little bit to get used to the fact that my mom doesn't want me anymore. And they wander off, and this is the most challenging time because now they're on their own. What a lot of them tend to do is try to find another moose, whether it's a bull who might tolerate them or another orphan, and that helps them through figuring out we'll stay together for safety. But it's a very challenging time for moose calves. So this is at Jackson Hole Ski Resort, actually at the base, and the density there is so much that I'm a big skier, by the way. And the first time I went to Jackson Hole, I paid for a lift ride up, just to go up the tram and look back. I got in the back of the tram, we're rising up. Oh, look, horses. They don't let horses run around. Those are moose. There were 3 moose crossing under the tram line. And to this day, every time we go, we either see moose on the hill, or you come down the ski trail and there's their tracks. Yep, they're down there feeding. That's how wild it is. And the moose density is through the roof. So this is mom. That's the youngster feeding on the twigs. And the more slender they are, the more nutritious they are. And this year, they had a little climbing wall built in right in the entrance to Jackson Hole. With hundreds of people coming off the mountain, there were moose no further away than Patty is. So if you give them their space, they're not going to attack you. It's all about knowing, watching their behavior, and not crowding them. But that was amazing to watch. All right, I was there last year, and I never go without bringing my cameras, so I take extra days for little safaris. And this moose is in the process of shedding its antler. Now, I've often wondered, do they use a tree? What happens is the base or the pedestal begins to dry out due to bone loss. So it becomes loose, and that registers in the moose, and he'd rather get rid of this rather than carry it all through the winter, because again, it's a significant amount of weight. And it's not both antlers, it's one side at a time. So here he is. He's actually crossed the road in between 8 to 10 cars, and all the people scattered because that's a 1,000-pound animal. And as he crossed the road, he started running. Now, I've seen moose run many times. This moose was not running in a straight line. He was running in a zigzag. Not only that, while he's running in a zigzag, he's doing this. So I start shooting. This is the first shot. Notice the antler. It's in mid-air, has not hit the ground. Oh my gosh. I never thought I would see this. Unbelievable. He stops because he realizes it now. Look at him. He's looking down. Takes a few more strides. Turns around to show me the nice back view. Yep, that antler's gone. And then he turns around to show me the pedestal. So you'll notice it's almost already scabbed over. So it heals very, very quickly. And along about April, new growth will start all over again. Simply unbelievable. Now, there must have been 60 people that saw this happen. I can tell you they all wanted that antler. We all know, because the lady, when one 20-year-old started to walk out into the field, you can't take that, it's against the law, this is a national park. So he stopped, he went back to his truck. I came back at 5 o'clock, I saw his tracks, he got it. He waited. I wasn't going to spend the whole day waiting him out. I have an elk antler that I took home, It starts with a typical beam, 6 points, a double beam with 4 points. I wasn't going to leave that for the critters to gnaw on. Every mouse, every porcupine, every rodent that comes by, or it simply leaches into the ground. That's the most spectacular souvenir I've ever got, except for the little plastic gun I got when I was 6. So that's up on my wall. Now this would have been a great souvenir, but then again, I did get the shot of the antler in the air. But that's what the West has. Okay, here's a cow and a calf. And again, she will take care of the youngster as it grows. It's easily 3/4 her size, but they need more experience. They need more moose experience. Now, calves can bear young in their 2nd year. And typically, if they wait a year or two, or if it doesn't happen, they'll have better success. And most calves can produce young every single year once they're 3 years old. And there is the most amazing moose video if you really want to see it. It's on YouTube, which I love. It's free. It's called The Best Moose Documentary Ever. It's the one thing that's ever made me want to visit Russia. There's a moose farm in Russia called Kostroma. Now, years ago, they tried moose dairy farming, only to learn it's far too challenging if you have other animals, if you have pets. However, in Kostroma, and they're not far from Moscow, they realized that we can use moose to our advantage, and there's something they're going to do for us people. And what is that? Well, they have these logging operations. Now, again, in the winter, the moose eat the twigs and the bark. So they have machinery that takes the trees down. Then they let the herd of 35 or so moose in. The moose feed on the bark. Amazingly, they have learned so much about moose. So they have a moose there that didn't have twins or triplets, 4 young. Now, that would never happen in the wild. Triplets does happen in really good habitat. But what they have learned is how to bring a moose calf away from mom in the first hours, because that moose calf is bonded with a nursemaid whose job it is every year when she gives birth. She has a very direct relationship with that. She milks her, and for the first 2 weeks they feed her milk to that moose calf, and then later she's fed a blend of milk that they provide. They feed them oatmeal, they feed them salty water. They know all about how to raise moose. And the coolest thing is, there's 2 things really. They've discovered that the moose milk helps cure peptic ulcers. So that helps actually subsidize the farm. It's also a tourist activity. They will bring in groups of tourists who get to come see the moose. Now, it's like walking into the courtyard. All these moose are so comfortable with people. You walk up to them, you pet them. They have children who live nearby who get to spend time with the new calves bonding, because they've learned when the calves are that small, if they bond with humans, they're going to carry that right on into adulthood. They're almost like domesticated dogs. So if you really are interested in seeing things you never would have thought you've seen, the best moose documentary ever. Amazing. So this is another shot in winter. These moose, of course, have to deal with wolves and coyotes and mountain lions, which are all still super predators of moose. But it points out that in good habitat, moose numbers remain consistent. Now, here in New Hampshire in the 90s, through a variety of factors, we had a moose population that was pretty close to 8,000 to 9,000. Now we're about half that. But there's a lot of different factors, and one of those factors is we don't have anywhere near enough snowpack consistently. We also have too many white-tailed deer. It's white-tailed deer that are the vectors for the winter tick. Moose do best where there's no deer, because then they don't have the winter tick. It's just that simple. So when you get up into Canada, you get up in Alaska, the deer are gone. Even Maine, their moose herd dwarfs ours, because it's the northern point at which deer start to drop off. So the moose don't have problems up there. Sweden has 400,000, and I often wonder how the Volvo has that long hood. That's a moose-proof vehicle, because the danger when you hit a moose is he rolls over and comes right through your windshield. If you have a longer hood, he just stays on the hood. So it's engineering. And all their roads, if they have one accident with a moose, they put up 7-foot fencing. The moose problem goes away. So there's a carrying capacity that the habitat can survive, And then the other thing is there's a certain cultural, because when people, 1 in 7 collisions with a moose is fatal to the driver. People are not going to tolerate that. 1 in 70 with a deer. So there's a big difference because moose are such a larger animal. But I'm very confident that our moose will carry on. We still have moose in this area. I was talking to someone in Freedom, saw a moose last month. So they're trudging on, and they have a habit of rising up and then rising down. All of nature is dynamic. But they truly are an iconic animal. And that's the Tetons in the background. This 6-shot sequence I call moose ballet. If you've ever been in the Maine woods and you've seen blowdowns, you wonder, how does an animal this big go through that? This will show you how. That's barbed wire, by the way. You don't want the family jewels to get cut. Look at that, huh? Like a ballet or a racehorse, huh? Amazing. And this, a friend of mine was kind enough to send me, this is the kind of moose density. This is the elk arch antlers in Jackson Hole. And here's a cow and a calf coming out, and here's a bull going in. And that's the kind of density that they have in Jackson Hole, which is just in the shadows of Grand Teton. And this, a hunter friend of mine was kind enough to send along. This is a natural death moose, and the critters came along and fed on everything else. He found this and propped it up for the photo. So they are really, truly an iconic part of our natural state in New Hampshire, and I'm thankful that they'll continue. Well, thank you. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's presentation.
Very nice.
Thank you very much.